We made this.
Hello and welcome to CHUCKYVISION on the We Made This Network, the podcast about the Chucky and the Child Play franchise. We're doing all 7 films and the TV series in October, and then maybe some more after that. We have done an impressive 5 films now, and we're almost done with the movies. We're on to 2013's Curse of Chucky, but I'm not alone here. I am your host, Devin Elson, and with me, my co-host, Mark Adams.
Hello.
How do you feel about getting this far into the franchise? I felt with a lot of other horror franchises, like your Nightmare on Elm Street, your Hellraisers, your Friday the 13th, even though they are good fun, I feel like when you get to the 5th or the 6th film, it's a little like, okay, they're kind of milking it. I feel like after Bride and Seed, this is a franchise where I'm like, oh, what else are they going to give us?
It was 9 years after the wildly unsuccessful, genuinely quite important, in my opinion, last film that was Seed of Chucky. We are now in basically what I would consider modern films, whereas I guess the original Child's Play stuff would be retro. This was made in 2013, so it feels slightly different. It almost felt like a reboot, but I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad that it had the referential stuff. Quite subtle, but definitely had the referential stuff.
Well, you can probably get into spoilers straight away. We are in the 6th film. It is framed in an interesting way. I don't think they had any kind of deal with Netflix, but I remember this came onto Netflix like as soon as it came out. So maybe they had some kind of like, it goes on Netflix first or whatever. It's definitely written and directed in a way that it feels like a reboot. And then in the plot, it's becomes markedly clear that no, this is actually like a full canonical sequel.
Yeah, I thought that was actually quite clever. Like you say, it was the first straight-to-DVD and streaming release, which means that we can't really look at how much it grossed with any kind of worth. It had a tiny budget of 2.8 million, and it grossed 3.8 million, and that's a success? I don't even know on fucking straight-to-DVD stuff.
Cult was 2017, so again, a bit of a gap. It's, if it's straight to DVD, then it obviously made enough money for them to, get a sequel. And you're right, yeah, it does. We've talked about this in earlier episodes, but it definitely feels different. Yeah, it was like shot in 30 days, and it was the first movie shot on digital, not film. I think it's a good looking movie, especially good looking for how cheap it is. But just saying that it looks different compared to like the first 3 Child's Plays, they looked very much shot on film. Like, there's a vintage sort of quality to them. Bride looked great. Seed, you could mistake for being shot on digital. It has a very weird 2000s look to it.
Yeah, Seed is a lot of things, and we had a lovely chat about that. But I think Seed was a very positive thing for people like me, and for trans people, and etc., etc. But I don't think it was a positive thing in general for the franchise. I think that really could have been the end. So I think they were quite fortunate to have the opportunity to kind of relaunch in a kind of thematic and tonal way with Curse of Chucky.
Definitely, yeah. It's not a reboot, but it's a relaunch in so many ways, because there's a number of things that make it feel more like the older ones, especially the first one. One thing we've always separated Child's Play 1 from the others is that is like quite a suspense film before it gets to the horror, whereas the others get straight to the Chucky. And this one, we get Charles Lee Ray on screen again, so we're tying in with the first film. We've got, it's the longest time it takes in the movie to actually hear Chucky, similar to the first one.
Yes, like 43 minutes I wrote in my notes, and I'm all about it. It shouldn't work that the 6th film about this killer that everybody knows is a doll works, that it's full of suspense until you hear the iconic voice, and that's so damn well done.
And yeah, similar in in numbers, it's the longest film. 97 minutes isn't long for a movie, but these movies have always clocked in at a very lean, like, just barely 80 minutes. So, like, Don Mancini has said this is his first horror film that he's directed, because he did direct Seed of Chucky, but that was very much its own thing. Whereas it really feels here that he is not just having fun with his own creations and stuff, he is really working hard to make like a solid horror movie.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about, as always, the Rotten Tomatoes score. The Rotten Tomatoes score for Curse of Chucky is higher than Child's Play by 5%. Child's Play got 71 and Rotten Tomatoes got 76. And obviously I looked that up, having not watched either of the films recently, and I was thinking, surely not. But I tell you what, there is case here that it kind of deserves it.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to get away from what you're trying to talk about, but I imagine that is mainly because the Child's Play has a lot more reviews, like equaling it out, whereas Curse of Chucky probably does not have as many reviews, but the reviews it does have are a lot of people who are pleasantly surprised by how decent this film is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's definitely merit in your argument there, because Rotten Tomatoes is fundamentally flawed in that way, and I don't feel like there's a solution, but it does mean that you should maybe take the ratings with a pinch of salt. But I said when we did Child's Play, I thought Child's Play deserved about a 75-80, and I think Curse deserves a 75 or 80 as well. It's an exceptionally good horror film. When you think about how it was following Seed of Chucky, it was straight to DVD, it had a micro budget, it was a franchise that people perhaps weren't enamored with anymore. It's a phenomenon how well this film was made and received.
We're going to get into the plot in just a second. I would definitely credit Mancini at the top of that, because I think he has got his finger on the pulse and stuff. I mentioned other franchises, and one I've been talking about it recently, the Hellraiser franchise. When that went direct to DVD, that was in the mid 2000s when it was physical media direct to DVD, actually direct to DVD. So that was all the class and the subtlety and the art of Clive Barker went out the window when it got to around like the fifth film onwards, because they would just sell it. They were trying to sell as many DVDs as they could to the main market for horror audiences, which was like teenage boys. So it got really dumb. It got really juvenile. Whereas here, when we say straight to DVD, we're also talking about straight to streaming. And that ties in with how this feels like a reboot, in that Mancini really, really crafted it in a way that people who only maybe have never seen one of the films just know Chucky as a character. They can see this on their Netflix and they can get into it just from the start.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it gives us just those little kind of fanboy references, in a lot of ways similar to the MCU, where they just don't matter. But for the people who really care and are into the franchise, you spot that, you spot that, you spot that. Something that Marvel has become very, very kind of eponymous, is that the word? For doing. Basically, they do it a lot, and it doesn't really matter whether or not you're a fanboy or you're not, because it doesn't affect the plot. It just gives you a reference that you like if you're a massive fan. And I think you don't need to have seen even Child's Play 2 and 3 to get on with this film.
Let's get straight into the plot then. So it's been a long franchise. It's been 25 years since the first film, and it's been 9 years since the last film. So what a great time for a refresh. We've got a brand new character, Nika Pierce. She's a paraplegic woman who's been living alone with her mother, who it seems that she's also having some
mental health problems.
Yeah, mental health problems. Yeah, they've been caring for each other, and then her mother dies suddenly, ruled as a suicide. And so Nika's family, her sister, her brother-in-law, and their daughter, and along with the au pair, they all come in, and they're all basically dicks, aside from the girl. They're all, Mancini still has his knack for sharp dialogue, and all these people are trying to get the house, this big gothic mansion, away from Nika.
It's interesting that you said she lives alone with her mother. Your phraseology really resonated with me because in a lot of ways you can feel lonely even when you're with other people. If they make you feel lonely and they don't give you the love and support that you need. And it does feel like poor Nika was in the worst situation. And like early on in the film, she describes herself as disabled, not a child. And again, I loved that. I feel like as a wheelchair user, as a main protagonist, it's done so rarely, but I felt like it was done really very well here. And again, like you say, credit to Don Mancini. I feel like he's really kind of, as he's got older, matured as a writer and understands that you can put sensitive issues into horror films rather than just splat gore.
Absolutely. And Nika, if we'll, get into her character, Nika is a really strong character, and Mancini's also correcting what he maybe he feels he failed to do with. Karen was a great protagonist. Andy was also a good protagonist in his own right. And then he was fine in Child's Play 2, and Kyle was fun, but then Kyle doesn't come back for free, and a lot of the characters feel a bit flat and free. Especially, I feel like Don Mancini didn't know where the character of Andy was going by Child's Play 3, and so we get all these new characters in Bride and Seed, but they're all pretty flat, the human characters, because he really wanted to focus more on Chucky himself and flesh him out as a character.
That's fair.
Whereas here, I feel this is him finally, taking a chance. As we've talked about, he does not write pretty much any other films other than just these Chucky films. So I feel like this is really an opportunity for him to demonstrate that he can write strong characters, strong original characters.
Yeah, I absolutely think you're right, but I just love how I have disabled friends who have complained about this sort of issue in the past. It's really done sensitively, stuff like her mum saying, "I wouldn't want to see you get hurt." It's patronising, it's overprotective, but it comes from a place of love, and it puts you in a very, very difficult situation if you're disabled. Do you hurt this person's feelings if they're not giving you the support you want? And I think the answer is you have to. And that's the opinion that my disabled friends have told me. But I love how it's done in a way where you can see that the mum isn't really a bad person. She's doing a bad job. And that happens more often than you might think when it comes to people with disabilities.
Yeah, the family we've talked about. They
were a bunch of dicks. They were deliberately
they are all dicks because they immediately try shuffling Nika off into some place that would be better suited for her, while they get the big house that's probably worth a lot of money.
Do you know who I disliked more than the family? Pushy Vicar. He can get in the sea. So, full disclosure, I am humanist and I have a massive problem with religious privilege and assumption that everybody has faith like this vicar does. I loved the kind of atheism, theism discussion in this film as well, because it was actually done quite sensitively as well. Don Mancini really does seem to know what he's talking about, and he, again, similar to the issue of the overprotective mum, he does it in a really sensitive way that shows that people aren't necessarily bad people for doing stuff that you find distasteful. They're mostly misguided or mostly trying to do good. And I'm all about that. This film is so much more sophisticated than it had any fucking right to be. I was expecting a doll with a knife going and stabbing people. And very little social commentary, very little thought-provoking stuff. Those are the two things that stuck out to me, really. The kind of quite subtle but very much there discussion of theism and atheism, and the discussion of how disabled people are treated in society by their friends and their family and by other people.
Precisely. I think you really hit it, the nail on the head there. I think misguided is a really good word to use with some of the themes that he's exploring, because I feel like he has recognized one of the enduring traits of this franchise is that when dealing with, a supernatural doll like Chucky, you can't just tell people that it's a supernatural doll because no one ever believes you. And whilst that was very direct in the first couple films, parallel into what you're talking about, I feel like that's bleeding into some of the other topics we've been talking about and what Mancini has been writing about, that people overstep what they think they know and talk about
Yes.
what they think they know. It's about looking at different perspectives and getting a more objective truth.
And there's actually a very positive moment at the start of the film for Nika. The expectation of a delivery man being boring or just a random person kind of being patronizing doesn't happen. The delivery man flirts with her as a direct comparison to the way the woman who knows her treats her in the first few minutes. It's really, really interesting to see that some people are on it and some people have got the right way of dealing with someone, and some people who think they've got the right way really, really haven't. But the dialogue did feel a little bit like a porno. Is that a fair thing that I just said?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've got the guy delivering his package. Yeah, yeah. It's a setup.
I've seen pornos where the guy delivers his package and then he delivers something else. Very well-meaning, and maybe my dirty mind ruined it a little. I loved that it was just some random guy that got it right compared to the woman that she was living with. Oh, it was really well done. Despite the fact it made me think of porn, it was really well done. This film impressed me from the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, it is a strong character moment because it does emphasize that, because a lot of the movie hinges on her disability for the sense of suspense, how she gets, like, practically how she gets around the house. And this is a really good, I imagine Don Mancini writing this out like as a horror film, and like, oh, she has to go up this rickety elevator and it takes time and she can't get to her family in time, writing it in a structured way, and then going back and adding this scene where a character doesn't see her in a wheelchair, he just sees her as an attractive woman and just sees her as a person. And I think, that's it's a positive reinforcement that, she is a person and like she's not defined by her disability.
Absolutely, and it's crude, but disabled people fancy people too, The fact that some people think that treating a disabled person like a child, like her mum does, is appropriate and kind. People need to be better educated on it. It's wrong to do that. You say, hello, how are you doing, to the able-bodied person that you see stood next to someone who's a wheelchair user. And then you go, hiya, how are you? Their brain is the fucking same. And this was done so well, despite it being a bit porny. I don't think it was meant to be porny.
Wait until we get to the sequel. We'll see how much she can do in a wheelchair.
Yes, indeed. I'm
Which
very
again
much looking forward to talking about that.
It's a great positive moment for her character.
Agree.
I skirted around it in the synopsis and never mentioned it. Yeah, Nika is played by Fiona Dourif. Dourif? I say Dourif. I feel like we've been pronouncing that differently this entire podcast. I say Dourif and you say...
Dourif? That could just be our accent.
Maybe.
You walk 10 miles in Britain, the accent changes, whereas in America they all sound the same, right?
But she's played by Fiona Dourif, and who does she get in the mail but her dad?
Yes, she does.
She receives a package of a good guy doll, not scarred, not all messed up like the last two movies. This is a classic Child's Play original doll. And without seeing him move or run around or say any witty one-liners, her mother is found dead, and they rule it as a suicide, but it's the first instance that something isn't right. We talked about the suspense. It's a really interesting film because we all know who Chucky is, but it takes a good while before Chucky becomes Chucky. There's a lot of time spent with these characters.
Yeah, and I really like how I've always been super jumpy. Just that's the way I'm built. So something like Jaws will scare me a lot more than something like Saw. Just the little hand reaching out scared the absolute shit out of me. And that was brilliant. And there's something more creepy about the kind of happy face, the normal face with the eyes moving, compared to the scarred Chucky doll, because there's something much more innocent about the way that original look looks compared to the clearly scarred evil thing that we know is the Chucky doll. There's just that little thing of it basically being a Cabbage Patch doll, and the eyes moving. It's like a painting with the eyes moving. It's more creepy if it's not expected, whereas you kind of expect it with scarred Chucky because the game's up. It's Chucky.
So, yeah, when it came to scarred Chucky, it was him very much as a character. I mean, he was on WCW. Around that point, he was a celebrity. He was no longer a killer in hiding, and Mancini really trying to recapture what worked about the very first film. This is a killer that can hide right next to you in your house, and no one would suspect him. And Chucky makes good on that. I mean, like a lot of the sequels, when people start dying, it's very clearly a murder, but one of the first kills is the priest we've mentioned, Father Frank, and that is such a great long sequence where he doesn't get stabbed, he doesn't get decapitated, he just gets poisoned with rat poison. It's a really great suspense sequence.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a suspense film. The impending dread, the absolute impending dread of seeing these people eating their dinner. Which one is getting the rat poison? This film has no right to be this damn good. The pacing is great. The suspense, the intensity is great. I just bloody love this film, and it's not supposed to be this way.
And we've talked about the evil of Chucky before, but it's that classic Hitchcock thing about the bomb being under the table and stuff. It's not that we see him poison Father Frank's soup, and then it's like, oh, when's he going to eat it? When's it going to take effect? Chucky poisons a random bowl of soup in the kitchen, and we don't know, they don't know, even Chucky doesn't know who's actually going to die. I mean, the child could get it.
That's the beauty of it. I really love the randomness. I think it adds, in a weird way, it adds to Chucky's evil that he's just gleefully killing whoever the fuck this time.
Yeah, he's an opportunist killer, and that really speaks to just the evil of him.
He's always been really evil, and people seem to forget that Chucky isn't evil because he's funny. And I really like this kind of back to basics, absolutely unredeemably evilness of Chucky.
Yeah, and again, she's barely in this, but near the end, we even get Tiffany returning, and even she is more outwardly evil. I mean, Bride and Seed both, kept doing that melodrama thing of she wants to give up killing, and, she doesn't think Chucky is all that swell and stuff. But no, here, she's just as evil as Chucky.
I think if she spent 9 years with him, she's made the decision, don't you? And I think that's... Remember we talked, possibly in Seed or Bride of Chucky, about how I couldn't get my head around the time span. They've gently settled that in this film. It's clearly set in the year it was made.
Yeah.
Yeah, after a bit of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, basically caused by Child's Play 3, my OCD is more comfortable now. Is Cult of Chucky set not long after this?
Is it really set that many years after in
That's
2017?
What I was thinking. We might have some wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey back.
We might do again, because I don't think it's that set that long after.
I'm not sure I'm happy with that, but we'll talk about that when we get to Cult.
But you're right about the wibbly wobbliness. We do get that Google scene of Nika learning herself and also refreshing us on the history of the Chucky doll. And we get references to Andy and the military school and all the old murders and stuff, as well as Charles Lee Ray.
Yeah, he does look like Tommy Wiseau, even more.
I mean, yeah, oh god, yeah, we did say that way back in...
No, you said that and fucked with my head. You ruined it for me.
Okay, I said that in Child's Play 1, and oh my god, yeah.
Did.
Yeah, Brad Dourif has said that he had wear a lot of makeup for these flashback scenes, and it is probably the only real unintentionally funny part of this movie, that it's a flashback of like a barbecue, an outdoors barbecue, and then it just cuts over to I think he was like 64, 65 or something.
And he needed to look about 30.
I mean, regardless of how old he is still Brad Dourif. With dressed as Tommy Wiseau. He stands out completely.
Stop it. I know he looks like Tommy Wiseau.
He's got this long black hair and the sunglasses.
Do you know what? After our first episode where we mentioned that he looks like Tommy Wiseau, I've had like 4 or 5 friends message me and go, he does look like Tommy Wiseau. That's your fault. You ruined it, Devon. Be ashamed. He does look like Tommy Wiseau. I hate you.
I mean, regardless of what he looks like, he does not look like just some friend you have at a barbecue. He stands out.
No, he does, because he looks like Tommy Wiseau. Fuck my life.
God, we're shooting all over the plot here.
We are a little bit.
Where do you want to pick up?
The actual explicit Cabbage Patch Doll reference popped me.
Oh, yeah, they do, yeah.
They actually called the Good Guy doll. They referenced the Good Guy doll along a list of products that were around at that time and explicitly referenced the Cabbage Patch Doll. And I was like, that's fucking brave. You wouldn't have done that in the 80s.
That is always weird to think that we also had the real dolls, because it's like when people talk about like Superman existing during World War II. Like, why didn't he ever help turn the war? It's like I bet the CEOs of Cabbage Patch were like, oh my god, thank God we aren't the Good Guy dolls.
Yeah,
exactly. Our dolls aren't being possessed.
I think what's really important that they've captured in this film so perfectly is the malevolence of a harmless thing being such a threat. The audience knows more from the very, very start, but they cover it so nicely in the way, there's this cute little doll. It's a lovely little doll. We all know more, and there's a real kind of grim malevolence in that, I think.
And it works so well in this film as well, because with other films like Child's Play 3, or, you know, even 2, which is good, sometimes the plots of, like, the characters and what Chucky is doing don't quite align. Parents, the new parents in Child's Play 2, you know, they don't believe all the doll stuff. They just think Andy is a bit disturbed after what happened. But even then, like, you know, they're just there for most of the film, really, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly that.
What works in this, like, more tightly written film, these characters actually have, like, plots and motivations going on and stuff, so even if spooky stuff is happening, the mother died, and then Father Frank is found dead. Also, we should point out as well that, yeah, he got poisoned, but then he also gets decapitated in a brutal fashion.
Yeah, this is definitely a film that earns its 18 rating, I think.
It seems like they're really going to go the way of, like, just a quiet suspense film, and then he drives into a sign and his head falls off. With the characters, though, it's like, with these films, when spooky stuff is happening, a lot of people would scream at the TV, like, are you blind? Stuff is clearly happening in this house. But these characters are a bit self-absorbed, and they are more interested in the actual stuff happening, aside from Nika, who is the only one really investigating stuff.
Mm. And her sister really is a completely and utterly unsalvageably bad character. She's selfish, unpleasant, patronizing, delusional. She's just a horrible, horrible person. What I really like, is that she's LGBT. And if I can explain that, it's because representation isn't just putting positive LGBT people on the screen. There are as many bastards who are LGBT as there are bastards who are heterosexual. And as brave as it could be considered, the fact that she is a horrible woman, but she's a horrible bisexual woman. Her sexuality is part of the film and it's part of the plot, but it isn't saccharine and it isn't done in a way where people feel like they have to make all the LGBT people goodies. That's okay with me. In fact, that's really positive for me.
Yeah, I was going to get into the sister, Barb. Yeah, like, her character is an interesting one because she is such a dick. It's done in a very smooth and natural fashion, like, that serves the plot that, yeah, she is bi and she is cheating on her husband with the nanny. And then I think that there are like some like hints and suggestions that like the nanny and the husband are something, and then we get that quote unquote twist that it's actually the two women that are together. But her being in a gay relationship it's not the reason why she's a dick. She's
No.
also keeping it secret this way because she's trying to get as much money as she can out of the husband.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's an affair plot, but it just happens to be an LGBT affair plot, which LGBT people do that. They get into the wrong heterosexual relationship and they keep it all very secret. I really like it. I think as a plot goes, it's done in a really modern way, a normal, I should never use that word, but it's almost like a normal plot about cheating on your husband. It just happens to be a realistically LGBT one.
And I'm trying to remember, I swear the husband doesn't say anything noticeably disparaging. Like, he does at one point start to figure out what's going on. Does he say something? He doesn't say anything bad against LGBT stuff, no, does he?
No, I don't think he does. I think it's all about she's cheating on me. It's irrelevant to him who she's cheating on him with, which is good.
She says something like, oh, this is just one of your sick fantasies or whatever. Like, trying to play off that it's absurd.
Yeah, and again, that's playing on it, and a bad LGBT person would do that. Would suggest that they are into lesbian porn, etc., etc., because they were trying to hide the fact that they were actually doing a infidelity thing. Mark has an English degree. They were being unfaithful.
It sort of leans into that sort of melodrama that Mancini liked, that was so egregious in Seed, but it's much more natural and subtle in this.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think he's, in a lot of ways, learned from Seed, which is important and good.
I mean, that's why I don't say anything. All these comparisons to Seed, it's not like I'm saying this good, Seed bad. This is why I love horror franchises that go on for so many sequels. I feel like people absolutely need to push and see how far they can push it, and then they can use it as a barometer. To make perfectly balanced films like this one.
This film's bloody great, isn't it? So what I really like is that he's clearly thought about what he's doing here. Good and bad LGBT characters, good and bad theist characters, good and bad atheist characters. I really like the balance that he achieves here. So when you think about, compare Nika to Chucky. Chucky doesn't believe in God, and neither does Nika. Chucky is fundamentally evil, and Nika is clearly a good person. You compare Barb to the nanny, and again, they're both balanced. And what I also like is that everyone sticks to their worldview. So you look at the way Nika deals with her niece when she talks about whether or not grandma's in heaven. She tells a compassionate lie. She's atheist. She doesn't believe that grandma's gone to heaven. She believes that grandma's gone. But later on, you see that she doesn't say amen during the meal. So she sticks to her values there. And I think all of it's done really subtly and really gently, but also quite sophisticated, that it doesn't take a side on who's good, who's bad when it comes to both atheism and theism and LGBT people. And I am all about that. Well done, Don Mancini. I love it. And I think, when we looked at Seed of Chucky, we were surprised by how sensitively he looked at the issue of trans people, non-binary people. And he's really good at that shit, isn't he? And horror films traditionally aren't very good at that.
What I'm really looking forward to with the TV show, because I said with Seed, is that I loved that he broached those subjects, but I feel like it was a little too rushed and maybe not as explored as he wanted to. And I feel like what happens to the characters in Curse and Cult leading into the TV show, he set up a situation now where he can really explore that in a better, mature way, that he's exploring these themes. And I think with Nika as well, when we're talking about a strong character, it's interesting when you set up these binary oppositions with beliefs and stuff, because it always sets up an interesting character, because when like her sister is patronizing towards her and her disability, Nika being defensive is completely in her right to be defensive, but it to other people like her sister, it comes across as aggressive, and that's like a really that's a that happens in real life when people try to defend themselves rightfully, and they come off as aggressive, and that's again we're talking about people's viewpoints and stuff. That's just how they see people, isn't it? So I think that's a really strong. When we're talking about strong characters, they're defending themselves more than physically. They're defending themselves in other ways.
Yeah, I've been the guy who defends himself too heavily and basically becomes the dick, and it's so easily done. And that's again something that they do really, really well in this film. Is that this person's in the right, but the way she dealt with it wasn't right. And I've been there.
And again, Mancini gets to explore the theme better because Karen in the first film goes through the plot of Child's Play 1 and then Child's Play 2. She's just off screen. She just went to a mental hospital. That same idea is followed up again. Nika is put in that situation, but we actually get to see her defend herself again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, this film it borrows so many of the same ideas and themes from other films, but then actually does something with them. Which, I don't know, I guess that seems like it just seems like the best example of a sequel.
Yeah, and I've said it already, this film is better than it has any right to be.
God, I mean, there's one thing. Half this film is Chucky-less. I feel like half this podcast has been Chucky-less.
It has. We should talk about Chucky.
Let's put Chucky in our vision.
Get right to there.
Try to move over it subtly, but it was.
That wasn't subtle.
No, it was not a subtle reference. Chucky does eventually show his face in more ways than one. We get the moment of Barb coming face to face with Chucky in the attic. She notices that something is a little awry with his face and starts peeling away at it, and we see the scars. There's no dramatic. I don't remember a dramatic stinger, but I mean, it's played in such a way for new audiences, like, oh, that's creepy. Oh, something's wrong with the doll. But for audiences that have been watching all the films, it's like, it's like a big pop. It's like, oh my god, this is like all connected.
It's like, oh shit. Even though you knew it was Chucky, it's still really well done and really worked, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, then, Chucky does what he does, and it actually gets violent. I mean, he stabs Bob right in the eye, which is, a gruesome kill.
That was gratuitous. So the gratuitous eye stab, because it was gratuitous, came as a shock to me. Even though I knew it was an 18, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the first kill, the electrocuting kill. I was like,
I mean, even that has a little bit of violence, though, doesn't it? Because, like, her face burns.
Yeah, true. That's also self-referential. The kills in Child's Play have either been innocuous, use your imagination, like, for example, Child's Play 2 with the ruler, or the guy in the garbage truck, if we're going to be American, in Child's Play 3. And then you have, later on in those films, you have quite gratuitous murders. That's a deliberate homage.
Yeah, we definitely get a great combination of old and new here and subtle and new. It's like, Father Frank, we get that very subtle, classy way of killing him off with the rat poison. But then we also get the bloodshed that horror fans want as well.
That's true. They kind of do both with Father Frank, don't they? Love it.
We're killing off there. That's also one thing I like as well. I mean, Father Frank is probably the most tangential character to kill off. Everyone here is a character that's been in the film, like, since the start of the film. There's no, like in Bride of Chucky. I mean, I love that film, but, like, those honeymooners that steal their wallets and stuff, they're introduced literally just to get killed off.
Oh, yeah.
These are all named characters with reasons to be there. Yeah.
Backstories.
And so I think that as well amplifies the violence of it, that, their stories are getting cut short so brutally. So, we're killing off the nanny, who I don't think we've named the entire podcast. Her name is Jill, but the nanny.
The nanny. They're terrible people.
She gets killed off. Bob killing off. Yeah, and we also have this great suspense moment for during all these kills and stuff, because we're getting, we're getting that classic killer doll killing people off, but we also have that suspense of Alice being sort of a replacement Andy, in that she befriends Chucky, and she thinks Chucky is, a good doll. She disappears near the end of the film, and Nika is like trying to figure out what's going on. She has to survive a doll attacking her, and she also has to find a family member, this, poor innocent girl.
It's just, I'm struggling. I'm really, really struggling. I try and kind of like do dog shit sandwich when I podcast, start with some good stuff, put the bad stuff in the middle, and then start with some good, and then finish with some good stuff. But I keep scanning my notes. I haven't written anything bad about this film, other than he looks like Tommy Wiseau.
And is that a bad thing?
Yes, Devon, yes.
Again, the strengths of this movie, we've got all these this slow burn for the first half of the film, and then when Chucky does come into it, it's not just kill, kill, kill. We've still got all these plots naturally coming together. And again, it goes into that thing we've talked about with people. People just can't believe that a doll is doing all this. We get this great turn in the conflict when Ian immediately believes that Nika's been doing all this.
Yeah, which, if I was in this situation, I probably would too.
And I think that ties in as well what we were talking about her character. Like, even though she's been defending herself, rightfully so, I guess to these people, they've come to this house to console his sister-in-law, and the whole time she's just been a quote-unquote dick. And now she's just snapped.
Yeah, and she's murdered everyone.
And
or at least that's what he thinks.
Yeah. Like, if it was just people are dying, then okay, that's, decent suspense. But I think what makes it great suspense is that his daughter, Alice, is not dead, just missing. So he's like, he has been a dick this entire time, but he is, at this moment, in the right to be demanding of wanting to know where his daughter is.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that amplifies why Chucky is so evil, because it's not about good and bad characters. He's just turning people against each other.
And he does seem to be sticking to type in the same way he has done across all of the films, where he starts with these quite elaborate plans, and he's patient. Then he loses his patience and he's fucking reckless. This film is so well done. It doesn't shit on any of the other films, but it definitely gives you the new tone that we talked about.
Maybe that's the only the nitpick when Ian goes to look up the nanny cam to find out what's happening, and that is also a really great a really great what's that phrase, to put a hat on it or whatever. To put a hat on a hat. No, a hat on a hat is a bad thing. Whatever. It's a really great moment that we've talked about, how the first person view of Chucky.
Yes.
Seeing him run around in first person. And that's a really great excuse to do it. That it's not him, it's the camera on him that's running around.
It's also a massively clever modernization, because obviously in the 80s, you didn't have the level of technology that they have for this film. So, there's an internet search earlier in this film, which is, I think, is the first time you see anything modern in a Chucky film. I don't think you saw it in Seed, for example. He even kills the nanny with the laptop, which he couldn't have done in Child's Play because laptops weren't a thing. Then this next level of the kind of misunderstanding plot, because there's a camera in Chucky, the kind of usage of that camera as he's about to kill Ian. I think it's a nice way of acknowledging this franchise started in the 80s, but we're going to put some modern stuff in it now because it's time. I just think that's really well done as well.
Yeah, and that whole technology thing comes into play with the remake, which we'll get around to. I know we keep thinking of the remake, but in the remake, yeah, that definitely seems like a strong point. Like, this is about technology now. There's technology inside the doll, whereas here it's just a natural evolution of things. The nitpick was probably just, it's one thing for him to be looking at the nanny cam and catching up on like the deaths and stuff, but then when he's looking at the footage, and the footage is entering the room and slowly walking up to him on the computer, He does. It takes him so long to acknowledge what's happening, like on screen.
Yeah, it does make him look a bit dumb, doesn't it? It just about works, but it is.
It's a nitpick. It's not a flaw.
So I'm going to use a word that I try not to use. It's a bit contrived.
I could see that's probably the only moment of the film where he wrote a scene out and then maybe realized how was he going to direct it effectively to get Chucky to him without him naturally just looking up immediately.
Yeah, it just works. There's a lot of moments in Chucky where it kind of just works. We talked about the fact that each gun has only got one bullet in it with the replacement paintballs. But as a concept, it works. But I do get what you're saying. That is the moment where it's like, oh, come on.
And I think what he was probably thinking as well, he covers it up nicely with a really brutal kill.
Oh, yeah. Horrible.
We've seen axes to the heads in plenty of horror films, but I've never seen like a jaw just be destroyed by an axe.
So here's my minor complaint. If you can't do it with practical effects and you have to CGI someone's spine or bone, maybe think of another kill. I didn't actually like that kill. That's probably my lowest point, is the CGI gore. I don't want CGI gore. If you can't do gore with practical effects, I'm not sure I want it.
Yeah, that is actually a decent complaint, and we brought that up in past podcasts. There is quite a bit of CGI Chucky in this. There's a lot of good close-ups of him and the actual doll, but there are shots of him like walking downstairs and walking along, and those full body shots look really ropey.
Yeah, that's also fair. Yeah, so there we go. We are doing dog shit sandwich. Are you done being mean about it? Because I don't want to be mean about it.
I think that's really the only thing to be mean about, and even then, it's him writing and directing his own film on a small budget direct-to-video. Yeah, he's clearly working with what he's got.
And that's what's really sad, is CGI used to be rare because it was more expensive than practical effects, and now it's the opposite. And I do feel like we've lost some craft when it comes to filmmaking because CGI is so cheap and easy. Yeah, and I guess, again, because this franchise is now, 25 years old at this point, it really shows you how filmmaking has actually changed for the positives, with Don Mancini learning what he's doing and taking his time and writing a plot that's tight, but also with modern issues being looked at. And then the necessity of CGI because that's all he can afford. I think these things are always swings and roundabouts, aren't they?
Yeah, probably what I was thinking along the lines of when I said earlier about other horror franchises making sequels and stuff. With those sequels, especially down the line in those franchises, they very much are just, we know what the audience likes. We like that too, so we're just going to put that out there. We're just going to do more of it. And here, it feels like every sequel is Don Mancini wanting to talk about something, wanting to say something, and then using Chucky as a conduit for that. Yeah. And I feel that's why that's how he's managed to go from theatrical releases to streaming releases to back to TV. Because I feel like when these producers read these scripts, there is always something in those scripts that attracts them to putting money to it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Talking about creating something that you wanted to create, did Don Mancini want to direct Sin City?
Did he?
Well, I don't know, but the scenes with black and white with the yellow sunflowers.
I see what you mean, yeah.
So it really immediately, I was like, fucking hell, it's Sin City. I didn't dislike that. I thought it was effective, but I do feel like any film that does this now, it will basically be Sin City in my head.
That was the seed Mancini creeping in there. Like, let's do something weird and camp and sort of like distracting.
No, I liked it. I did. But that's probably because I absolutely love Sin City.
Maybe they just needed something to distract from how noticeably old Brad Dourif was.
The previous flashbacks weren't in black and white, were they?
Like in Child's Play 1?
No, yeah, that's what I mean. All the previous flashbacks were... No, so this is the first time they've done it. So I mean, it looked cool and it worked, but I was like, you just wanted to direct Sin City, mate. I don't. Maybe there's a reason that I haven't spotted, but I don't know why they did that for a flashback. I feel like young Brad Dourif, in inverted commas, heavily made up to look younger Brad Dourif, and the mum character as well, young Sarah as well. I feel like that's enough for you to know it's a flashback. We don't need the Sin City gimmick, but I still liked it.
We've had all these references and homages to the first film. This is really the big moment that ties in with the first film. Because the flashback isn't just so Don can work with Brad in the Flash again, but it's directly tied with the opening of Child's Play 1. We see how Charles Lee Ray gets into trouble with the police and what leads to his death.
And what's interesting is, I did say in the first episode that you could have had like a whole film before the start of Child's Play. And this kind of addresses that.
Yeah, it does, and it adds a new layer to Chucky. I mean, it kind of reinforces old layers that he is evil and he is strange and just unlike other people in that he has strange, obsessive relationships with people.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of touched on a little with his relationship with Tiffany in the previous films. They're both clearly very damaged, broken people who have gravitated towards each other for that reason. But this makes it just that little bit more fleshed out and darker, I think.
Oh my god. I just connected why it's black and white with the Sin City thing.
Go on.
Because he gives her the yellow flowers, right?
Yeah.
That's what she's painting at the start of the film.
Shit.
At the start of the film, it's just like, oh no, she's suffering the onset effects of like dementia because she's painting these yellow flowers over and over and over again. But that's actually like her trauma of what happened.
Damn it. This film just got even better.
Oh, I think that only just clicked for me. Oh my god.
Well, it didn't click for me at all, and you've blown my mind.
Wow, so that really reinforces the theme of like trauma in these films. That characters just, for Chucky, he just kills people and moves on, but other people just can't get over Chucky. Oh my god.
I do feel like the coverage of trauma, again, like a lot of other issues, is really quite sensitively done in the Child's Play franchise.
God, I mean, we'll get into it now because we're really going into the finale here. A lot of characters are mentioned here and seen here. Like, part of Nika's resourcefulness in surviving Chucky is that she brings up Andy and talks about Andy. And again, tying with that sort of obsessive relationship with Sarah and Tiffany and stuff, he even sort of has that with Andy in a way. Hearing about him triggers something.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, before we talk about Andy, what do you think about this as like a horror finale? It's a really strong climax, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, it gets it right, and I really, really thought that she was dead when she got thrown off the balcony. And I love the twist in this, that normally it's Chucky who has 2 or 3 deaths, but it's actually the protagonist who has an inverted commas death that she survives. I thought that was a really nice take and really kind of clever little self-reference.
Yeah, and I always love that in horror films. I know it touches upon feminist themes and stuff, like negative associations with horror films of women being tortured and stuff. But female or male, I do love a protagonist in a horror film that does go through the trenches. They get beaten up. It reinforces them as a strong character, in this case physically, and especially with Nika, because the entire film, characters, her own family, are treating her as helpless. Before any danger arises, they're like, well, you can't live here alone in your own house. How are you going to get around? She does a tremendous job facing off against Chucky. That moment when Chucky charges her with an axe and she does that cool wheelie maneuver where she pushes the wheelchair up and deflects the axe with her own leg. I mean, that's a crazy moment.
It's grim, but it's already been established that she doesn't feel anything.
God, yeah. And then Chucky is like just trying to like pull the axe out of her leg. Oh god, it's gruesome.
Grim. It's grim. It's wonderful. It's so well done. And again, it's cleverly, sensitively acknowledging that the main protagonist is a wheelchair user. It's really well done. Really well done.
And her weakness is her strength. She converts everything into a positive, like in her life. God, yeah, she really goes through it. I mean, she gets thrown like off a balcony, which is it just one floor? I mean, or is it 2 floors? I mean, it feels like a massive drop.
It's a very dramatic moment. She does a fucking flip.
She does, doesn't she? She does like a full front flip.
For the wrestling fans out there, she basically does a senton bomb.
Oh my god, she does that. She does, what is it, the shooting star splash that Brock Lesnar tried to do?
Yeah.
Remember that when he tried to do a flip off the turnbuckle and
I
almost
do
killed
remember
himself?
that. It was horrible.
Oh my god.
Yes. I do, yes, of course I do.
Some wrestling in talk there.
Quite. But it's dramatic, and wrestling's dramatic.
Because she survived, and then even then it's not over, because then we get that whole flashback sequence where she learns about her history. That, oh god, yeah, the detail that Charles Lee Ray in his human form stabbed a pregnant Sarah in the stomach, and that is why Nika's disabled. That's how long-term Chucky's evil is. It's
absolutely abhorrent, and I think re-establishing Chucky as more evil than funny is quite important, particularly as we move on to Cult of Chucky, and again, the evil is emphasized rather than the funny. It's a really important new direction that they never really lost. They just emphasized with these last 2 films.
It gets the balance right. Like Nightmare on Elm Street 1 started with, and then completely lost the plot on, in that it's the killer finds this funny. It's not like objectively funny. It's subjective to them because they're a sick individual.
Yep.
And so, yeah, these films don't lose the humor. It's very strictly realigned that it's the killer that finds this funny.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, so, God, it's not even over for Nika. She still manages to pull away into the elevator. Chucky's there fighting. Yeah, we think it's all over. We think Nika is triumphant against Chucky. Then the cops barge in. God, it's kind of like Child's Play. It's what we didn't see basically right after Child's Play 1. How,
or 2, or 3.
Or any of them. How, yeah, so the police come in. They find this woman, the only person alive in this house. Everyone else has been brutally murdered. And yeah, they blame it all on her. And she is in court getting trialed as criminally insane. She's screaming out to that again, what you talked about, the effectiveness of Chucky being a lifeless doll. That Chucky is in court as evidence, just sitting there, and he gets away with it.
Yep, he does. And I wonder whether the courtroom scene is deliberate as a kind of reference to what they were planning to do at the start of Child's Play 2.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, they were going to actually do basically this scene in Child's Play 2. Yeah. That is also an interesting thing about Don Mancini getting to do stuff years later. We've had that as well with Bride of Chucky, when Tiffany gets electrocuted in the bathtub. That was going to be how the babysitter in 1 died. He always has these like scenes that get left on the cutting room floor and gets to revisit them years later and reapplies them in really almost better ways.
Spoilers, we'll be looking at that next week as well.
God, though, this film has multiple endings. That would be just a good enough ending. But then we also get to revisit the other survivor. Why did I say Nico is the only survivor? We also get to find out what happened to Alice.
It's not good, is it?
No, again, an even darker ending. She is with Chucky again, and he wants to play Hide the Soul, which, again, is a reference to the older films and stuff.
Mm.
And then, yeah, we get that jump scare at the end of the dead nanny and stuff. So it's a really dark ending that Chucky is going to get what he was always striving for with Andy.
Yeah, it's grim. It's grim that he eventually does get what he was looking for in the first film.
Yeah.
And then the post-credit, mate.
And then, well, here's an interesting thing. I watched this, the first time I watched this was on Blu-ray. And then I watched this again with a friend on Netflix. This post-credit scene isn't on there.
What?
The credits just end.
On Netflix?
Yeah.
Good grief. For those of you that watch this on Netflix, there's a post-credit scene.
And it's a crazy callback. Like, it's a crazy, lead into the sequel. This is like Iron Man, but the bloody Nick Fury scene doesn't play.
Damn, that's bad. Netflix need to sort that shit out.
All this talk about Andy returns. The same actor, Alex Vincent, returns as Andy. This is no longer the why do I keep wanting to say like one of the Home Improvement boys? Who the hell is the kid from Freight? Jimmy Olsen. That's it.
Yeah,
Jimmy Olsen ain't coming back. This is the original Andy. He gets a package just like Nika did at the start of the film. Well, this is the only, I guess, positive ending.
what, that Chucky gets shot right in the face?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like they're with two dark endings. It seems like people have sat through the credits and they get this and they're going to be like, oh god, even Andy's going to get killed off? But it actually becomes a really interesting lead up to the next film that we're going to get characters returning.
Yeah, and I was blown away by this film, and I don't think I watched it in 2013. I think I watched it quite a few years after that because I could watch Cult quite soon after. And I was really, really excited for Cult because of this film.
That's the strength of this film. It has so much going for it. It feels like a relaunch. It feels like a reboot, but also it's a sequel, and it gives way for really strong. It's a really strong lead-in for another sequel. It does everything.
Yeah, I agree. This film is so good. You could argue it's not very original. It doesn't have anything pioneering in it, but it's a hell of a horror film.
It is, and I think we've talked about how some of the scenes. Pretty much every episode of this podcast, we've been talking about how the first film feels different than the others, and this one really recognizes the strengths of where everything started.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
Not to get into it, we'll get into it soon. But with Cult of Chucky, I feel that's a nice balance of more of this, but then also more of Mancini teasing going off the rails. He doesn't go off the rails again with Cult. It definitely is more of a playground for him to play about with weird ideas. But it also it's Cult is a nice balance between seed and curse.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. So this film, right? I've written down a list of things that I think it was. Tense, creepy, creative, well-paced, brutal, gory, bleak, homage, not meta, sophisticated, and open-ended. That's a good list, that.
Yeah, it deserves that 70-odd% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's... God, I think we've gone on long enough about it. It's just a really strong film. It's a strong entry in a franchise, and it's a strong individual film.
We've said it already, but I think the fact that it's surprisingly good, considering the nature of horror films at this stage, stereotypically, I think I maybe enjoyed it even that little bit more because I was expecting it to be cack.
Yeah. I mean, I would easily do podcasts on any of the horror franchises, but we would absolutely, with almost any franchise, be getting into that so bad it's good territory. We sort of did with Seed, but this franchise is so different. It's so different in that each film feels like it's doing something new and doing something interesting. Yeah, that's maybe why some of these other franchises struggle. Like, do we do another Friday the 13th sequel? Do we do a reboot? Like, I mean, I'm happy for either. It's always going to feel like a bit of a retread. Whereas here, we're both excited for a TV show because we have no idea what to expect.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, mate.
Oh god, I've got to do my Brad Dourif. That's not going to end up well.
Do.
With no practice. Oh god. So, Curse of Chucky, and I think we've stressed our points enough that we both think it's a great film. We're going to be going on to the last film, Cult of Chucky, and then we're going to be waiting very patiently for the TV series. But in the meantime, where can we find you, Mark?
Well, first off, I will not be waiting patiently for the teleseries. Thank you very much. I'll be waiting impatiently for the teleseries. But you can find me on my personal accounts at Mark Adams HC on both Instagram and on Twitter. I'm on lots and lots of podcasts on the We Made This Podcast network and podcasts outside as well. I'm just going to name them rather than faff with social media. If you like tattoos, check out Ink Stories. If you like two idiots talking about kids' telly, check out Right in the Childhood. If you want something a little more serious based on my job as a humanist celebrant, you can check out Life's Milestones. And if you like television phenomenon sitcom Red Dwarf, you can find me on Shipwrecked and Comatose.
Fantastic. It's not as much to find with me, but if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Absolute Travis T. If you want to listen to an old podcast I did about Friday the 13th, that's Forever Friday on most podcast platforms. And just recently on the We Made This Network, I guest hosted an episode of Real Talk with Donna Galbraith. I talked about the new movie just came out, Censor. It's a great little horror film. Like this film, there is a lot to talk about in that film, so give that a listen if you like new horror films. Yeah, this has been another great episode of Chucky Vision on the We Made This Network. Wanna play?
You did very well there. Well done.
That was okay.
Chucky Vision is a podcast brought to you by the We Made This Network. Follow us on Twitter at CHUCKYVISION. Follow the network on Twitter at WMT_network. Our website is WeMadeThisNetwork.com. The logo was designed by Dev, and the theme tune composed by Dark Fantasy Studios. Wanna play?
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
The X-Cast, an X-Files podcast.
One of the interesting things about Carter's work as a writer and director, and again, this is something that I consider, personally, I'm not speaking as anybody with any theological expertise, to be clear, but just something that when I see it in his work, I think this is something I associate with Catholicism and my religious faith, the religious faith I used to have and kind of still never really kind of let go of, is Carter's preoccupation with the idea of sin, redemption, and in particular forgiveness.
Free with this month's issue.
I went for quite a few years in a row to Leeds Festival, where there seemed to be riots following us wherever we went for a few years.
Yeah, there was a riot at the one I went to, I remember.
Yeah. Well, me and Sarah, our first festival was Leeds 2000, where there was a riot in the field that we were sleeping in.
Because sleep is important and nothing is going to get in the way of my sleep. I need to clarify this.
We decided that if we didn't open the tent and look outside, we would be okay.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, opened the tent, and surrounding our tent were burnt tents and an entire row of toilet cubicles that had been burnt to the ground.
Wow.
So I like to think they thought, wow, if they think this is not worth leaving the tent for, we don't want to mess with these people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They're that committed to sleep. Let's not with them. They must be serious business.
Pick a disc.
And that was just before you trialed the phone line into the modem to get.
Oh man,
yeah.
how much trouble I got in downloading music and giving the family computer computer cancer, trying to go through. Because I had a very religious home, so on my MP3 player, the Black Parade, actually, I changed the titles because I wasn't allowed to really listen to rock music. So the Black Parade was like the Jesus Parade, and I changed the names and stuff. So if my mom saw me listening, I was like, there's no album art. I know exactly what the songs are.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.